Welcome to this class about calligraphy. I am so excited that there's still so much interest in calligraphy. I truly thought it was a dying art form and nobody knows how to do it anymore. So I'm really excited that I can be your teacher in this case. At first we're going to do the exercises to get into, to warm up, to make the movement of the pen and make it work on the paper as good as we can. And then, I'm talking about, of course, the exercises that you did when you learned the alphabet for the first time. I remember those classes still pretty well, and it was hard. But I liked it because time was flying by so fast, and that is because you get into the flow. When you do something that difficult and you need to concentrate so much, everything else just disappears. It goes away without you even noticing. And that is why I think people like it so much today, because we have an overkill on information and things to do, and our busy minds just never stop. During calligraphy class, you will notice that when you get in the zone, it's going to be your happy place. When we go a little bit further in the advanced, we can make more art forms with it. An ex libris is a good form that you make with your name in it and print it. Well, that's how they did it in the older days, to show that that's your book. And I know that's a habit that I have never seen in America, but in Europe we used to do that, ex libris. This is my book. But there's more things we can do with it. The good part is that we can also find sayings or quotes that we really like, that are life-affirming, and since we have to write them over and over again, we internalize it. I think that's a great part of that. But let's start with talking a little bit about the different pens, because we can work with pens that have a slight angle to them. That's a pen holder, by the way, but there's also pens who have this corner. And then we have the straight pen holders. We have flat pens and pointed pens. And flat pens, I'm talking like this. This is a brush, of course, but you can also have this in a pen, smaller, and it has the same effect. And the kind of letter that you make with that is called a translation. It transitions. You will see when we do the movement what I'm talking about. And then we have the pointed pens that were the pens that I learned to write with. We had ink and pens like that when I was 6 years old. That was all we had, and we had to learn to write longhand with these pens. That has a different kind of alphabet, a different kind of typography. And the pressure on the pen and the direction dictate how it's going to look like. So we're going to dive into that a little bit more as well. Then we have the paper. Originally, the monks were writing on parchment, which was stretched calf skin. And the good part was that it was so strong that if they made a mistake, they scraped it off with a knife. If you make a mistake, it's going to be a lot harder because of the paper. The paper is very important. It has to be smooth, because if not, the fibers of the cotton will clog your pen up and will not be sharp enough to make a beautiful sharp edge. So that's what we're going to look at. I do have here copy paper, but it is very smooth and strong. The good thing of the thin paper is that it's transparent, so you can put a grid underneath it to keep the same direction all the time. Other paper is Bristol, is smooth, and it can soak up a lot of moisture, which is good when you start using watercolor. Now, watercolor is my preferable ink or writing fluids, because you can choose different colors. I have black watercolor here, but you can change it into any color. And then with a brush, you can also make really big letters and start making these kind of compositions. So the paper is very important. It has to be thick enough to absorb water, and you also like to see the grit through it. We have light boxes that can help you with the direction of the grid, but it's not bad at all to learn without grid, because you will feel your way to a beautiful sentence. But that is a longer route, so to speak. We have inks, different inks. Most are black, but there's also walnut ink that is a little bit more brownish. I'm not going to get too deep into all the materials, because there is an overload of materials, and we want to narrow it down to something that will work for you. So we have the two typefaces we're going to work with calligraphy. Eventually you are going to choose one that you like best. But in the beginning, we're going to start all at the same level. And 3 hours of class look like a lot, but it goes by super fast. You will see. Let's go to the demonstration. So I will demonstrate two different pens today. And also two different fluids. This is watercolor, black watercolor. You can get, of course, watercolor in all different colors, which is the advantage of it. Mix it with a little bit of water so that you get the right consistency with a little watercolor brush. And I will show you how to put that on the nib once you are settled with your paper. Here I have the grid and a paper that is smooth. I fold one part and I use it to put my hand on so that the paper does not get greasy. It's always good to have it. It could also be a paper towel. It doesn't matter that much. So now we're going to mix as much watercolor with water as we can, so we can keep going instead of having to mess with the consistency again. The first exercises are pretty simple. We need to find a good rhythm and get good grip on the paper with the ink or paint. And so any of these exercises will do. The rhythm is now most important. The direction of the flat nib is different than the direction of the pointed nib, as you will see. So the grid here doesn't do much, although we still have the lines, the horizontal lines, that we can keep our letters in moving. You see, when you go a different direction, it's very thin. So the difference between thin and thick with a flat nib is pretty big. And the way the letters turn out is typical of this pen. Now, especially also when we go into the bigger expressions, we can use a flat brush as well. This is all about control and rhythm, and get the right rhythm. See how sometimes the lines are not going to go well, so you need to learn to do that. That is really the practice. When we go into the O and the E and the C. They all look a little bit alike. We have a thin part of the circle and a thick part of the circle, as you can see in the following exercise. It's really hard to get the small part pretty. So you will see what the practice really is. Sometimes you don't have enough paint anymore. Sometimes you run out halfway. So try to estimate when you're going to run out. Here you see the O and the E. The downward slope is always the same. It could be a little bit rounder or it could be a little bit steeper. Practice it and see how far you can get. Sometimes when the pen is a little bit newer, the nib, it has a grease of the manufacturer on it. And then we need to get a little flame going to burn off that fat, because otherwise either the ink or the paint is not going to take. So no worries, there's tricks for everything. With the same kind of lettering, we can also use a brush. This is a fairly big one, but there are smaller ones that leave beautiful marks and letters. If you want to do that instead of a pen, we definitely can do it. It doesn't matter that much. It is maybe a little bit harder to get a consistency of paint, but in many instances it doesn't even matter. And just let me know what you would like to do. These are examples that, see, now I have a smaller brush, which again is very sharp. The edges are very sharp, but there might be a problem of consistency of paint. It's all up to you how you're going to develop this course for yourself. This is watercolor paper. We need to have that, otherwise the paper would bubble. I don't know. Yeah, that's the word. When you see this alphabet, you can see that it is based upon the flat pen. This is a pointed nib. It really has a different character. We're going to start with the flat pen first. When you practice that, you will also be better in the pointed nib. The pressure I'm putting on is the pressure with which I'm going down. By the way, I'm using ink here, and also here you need to know how much ink you need to put on to finish a letter. The directions of the longer letters also need to be completely parallel to make a balanced visual. This is the trick, and it is hard with the grid, but it's even harder without the grid. If you learn without the grid, your feeling, your sense of space will probably be a little bit better. This is between two lines, and I don't have a top line nor a bottom line. And I actually would like to expand with curls because that's what it asks for. So I don't put any pressure on the upward move, but I put a lot of pressure on the downward move. And when I do that, it becomes really fat. And the more pressure are there to put on the downward move, the fatter it becomes. Problem is that it also loses ink very fast. So that's something you need to practice. I love this a lot. It's hard, but nothing is too hard for you to be able to make something beautiful out of it. Let's go try it.